Hey, this is Connor Steele.
Connor Alvin.
And Chris Gix.
And we're here to do our game demo. So
for starters, the basic idea for our game was to be a turn-based adventure game with a sort of tilted 2D art style in a 3D world. At a certain point during this quarter, we realized that we weren't going to get all of the stuff we wanted to implement to the game done, so we sort of started to focus more on the research aspect of the game, since that's a big part of our senior project and the paper that we're going to have to write afterwards. So our development became more geared towards testing our research question that our paper is going to be about.
So if you want to go to the story.
Yeah, this is our quick story we got here.
We got, the year is 2000XXX. Throughout the universe, portals to other dimensions are known to exist. The creatures in these dimensions have proven to be extremely dangerous to the inhabitants of our universe. To contain the threat coming in through the portals, the Watchers Association was made. Watchers take regular trips through the portals to defeat any and all monsters that may appear. You are a Watcher, and you must protect our universe.
So we just wanted some story to motivate the player to actually go out and have a purpose for doing what they're doing. And also we wanted a story that would let us build kind of whatever we wanted to for levels and enemies and still have it somewhat make sense like throughout time and space. So this is our hub world right here. Anything else about the story?
No.
Okay. This is our hub world. It's a little boxed in world. We showed this to you a few weeks ago, and it hasn't changed too much since then. We got some nice geometry culling when you go into buildings, and we have your friends that live out here, and you can talk to them as merchants of sorts. And we have our player character here. You spawn right here normally, and you can go jump in this portal to go to the tutorial, and if you go off to the right here, you have the nighttime battlefield and the gloomy dungeon. And we have a bunch of extra open space, but you can't go too far. It's a pretty small hub. So we'll go ahead and jump into the tutorial on this.
Yeah. I think like one of the benefits of our hub worlds being like having like some empty space is it kind of lets players get accustomed to how the game feels and controls before they actually like get thrust into any action. So they can kind of get a feel for how it controls before they. And like we put the tutorial right by the spawn point so that if they need to get more familiar with it, they know where to go to learn a little bit more about the game.
Yeah. So this is our tutorial, and we just wanted to make a tutorial that would be very visual so the players can figure things out by playing around with the game. So right here, it'll tell you how to move right away, just WASD, like a lot of computer games. But we play tested with a lot of people that don't play games at all, so that's why we wanted to just be straightforward and have people understand. Jumping's not a huge mechanic gameplay-wise, but it is a fun thing to have in the game. So we have this little pit here, and if you don't jump over it, you'll fall in there. And then this is one of the merchants that we have in the game that we set up, and he'll let you customize the difficulty setting of the game.
So this is where a lot of like the research aspect of our game came in. I don't believe we had shown this to you last quarter, but this is kind of what we put a lot of our time into. So he's called the scientist, so he can affect like how the game works. And we have right now 4 different ways to affect the difficulty of the game. And so you can either press any of the 3 buttons down towards the bottom to change how the values work, or you can adjust the sliders yourself to fine-tune the game to what you think would be the most fun.
And when you press the buttons, the sliders don't update, but the actual values in the game will update. And one of the reasons that we have these settings is because when we were playtesting a lot with players, and we give them the option to customize their difficulty, people that don't really play video games didn't really know what to tweak, or they were saying it would be nice to have just presets. And that was also something that we wanted to have in our research.
Yeah, and definitely, especially because, a lot of times people aren't going to know how they want to change the game until they've played around with the default settings. And a lot of people didn't really understand that just we did have default settings built into the game, but that was just the starting setup. So it was really helpful to put in these buttons, because people, if they thought that they wanted to be playing like on an easier level, they could try out the easy difficulty, and if they decide like maybe that was too easy, or for some reason that was maybe still a little hard, they could then more finely tune things.
And our decision to go with a system like this was somewhat influenced by games that already exist. Wargroove is one such game where you have a bunch of sliders to customize specific areas of the game, but there's also presets that let you just pick one of them and it'll set the sliders to values that the developers have predetermined. I think there's other games like Assassin's Creed.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah, that all have more difficulty systems that are implemented like this versus just like in Halo having easy, normal, heroic, like legendary. That doesn't really tell you. It's like enemies are harder and people have more health, but you can't fine-tune like one specific area of the game. So I'll just set it to normal for now, and then clicking that X button right here will boot you out and it'll save all those settings. So now we have a tutorial to tell players how to actually fight enemies. So if they walk up here, then they read this, it'll just tell them to click down here. When you hover over things, it'll tell you how much damage they do and how much the cost of the actual spell will do for your AP up here. So this orb, like it says, will you want it to overlap with the enemy, and then when you click, it'll actually spawn an attack there, and it'll do damage to the enemy, hopefully, if you're hitting them. So he's dead. And the enemies in the tutorial level give you a lot of experience so that we can let players try to buy some stuff right away. And then we can show you that enemies will do damage to you if you just want to run around. And then we'll just take this guy out. So right here we have a merchant, and it lets you know right away that you can just spend your experience points that you just got. And players were noticing that, when you kill enemies, your experience value goes up. So costs for the spells are displayed here. Got some nice flavor text for them, and just it'll tell you how the damage is calculated for them.
And you don't keep your experience like after you buy something. It works more like a currency than most, like how it works in most other games.
Yeah, so you don't use experience to level up at all, because none of the players that we play tested with were confused about that. They were pretty understanding that experience just works as a currency in this game. So then just more goblins to try out the abilities on, and we can see that when you hover down here now, it'll tell you the fireball and the lightning cost and damage for them.
And the different attacks have different hitboxes, so the lightning does a lot of damage, but its hitbox is a lot smaller, so you have to be a little bit more precise when you're firing it.
Also, players wanted an indicator, or not that they wanted it, but we noticed that players were having confusion about when they could actually go versus when the enemy could actually go, so we put in just a UI element here that says, it's your turn, so go ahead and move around or attack.
And the portal at the end of the tutorial level will take you back to our hub world.
And now we can go ahead and jump into a different dungeon.
Yeah. So usually when we're playtesting, we like to let players get accustomed to our game and just like see how it feels. And one of the things we did is we would often have them go in and fight some enemies before changing the difficulty, or at least just by using the preset ones, and like seeing how they think all the values are, and then when they were done, coming back and changing those values to see if they thought it made the game any better for them personally.
Yeah, and that's kind of our idea behind designing these small little levels. I also might have, I don't know that. We just wanted small little like test grounds or battlegrounds that players could get into fast, fight some enemies, see how they felt about the difficulty of the game, and then get out and tweak the settings again, maybe go into a different battlefield or the same one and change more settings with the game to see how they felt about the changes they had.
Mm-hmm.
And And one thing that we actually did notice during our research that was pretty interesting is that players tended to prefer the game before they tweaked the settings for the difficulty. And that's just because when they tweak the difficulty settings, the first thing that most players would do, I'd say about 60 to 70% of the players, they would just max out the damage that their person could do.
And it made the game way too easy. We had a lot of people like saying out loud, the game's way too easy now, and it was better before I made those decisions.
Right, but at the end of the day, that's sort of part of, that's just something that comes with the research we're trying to do, because, I mean, obviously, like, an ideal playtester would be trying to achieve a difficulty that they thought was just the most fun, as opposed to, you know, whatever makes them the most powerful. But a lot of our playtesters, I guess, correlated, you know, power with fun, at least initially.
So, speaking of power and fun, let's go turn up our attack powers all the way. Go into the hub, will restore your health. So, we'll go talk to the scientist over here and just, max out our damage. And then go repeat the same thing, because this is, well, let's go replicate what a lot of the playtesters did, which was, like, something like this. Where they're obviously very overpowered. And the health will reset when you go back to the hub. That's a little thing we have here. But as soon as you enter a new level, it'll set itself to its max value. Yeah. So let's compare how hard that was before versus one-shotting the enemies now.
And you can do it almost as many times as you want.
Just spamming the lightning bolt, which is our most powerful attack. But players actually were having a surprisingly hard time hitting the enemies sometimes with a lightning bolt, but you can see that it's absolutely devastating. All the attacks are devastating with the maxed out damage versus what they're doing before. And we actually had quite a few players die during our playtesting on their initial runs, and I think that's what made it more fun for them, they were saying, because they actually had the fear or the challenge that they might not succeed if they don't play intelligently.
Right.
Versus when they were just maxed out like we are right now, they could just spam a few spells and just clear out all the enemies in the room immediately, and that's not really that interesting.
We also had some people accidentally walking off the edge, so we made sure to put walls around our level so that didn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll go jump into the other dungeon that we had now. This is our gloomy dungeon. And this is the most recent dungeon that we were playtesting with players. Have some nice geometry coins so people can actually see the teleport back to town. And then we have a bunch of enemies in here, so we'll just get them. We're overpowered right now, so we might as well just get them all aggroed onto us. Or a few of them. Yeah. I'll skip my turn. Yeah, but you can kind of see that maybe right now that you can just kind of, it doesn't matter how many enemies you're fighting because you're ridiculously broken. So we'll go back and change the difficulty again after this and change that. So now we'll go set the difficulty back to normal mode. Jump into the dungeon again. And then hit some people with some spells.
And yeah, now things are back to being a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, where players actually have to think about... And like missing a lightning bolt is actually pretty devastating when you have this little AP.
It costs a lot of AP.
Another thing that we had to change was that people would stand really far back and just spam spells on enemies before.
Yeah.
Because the enemies wouldn't get added to combat, but now we had to change that because.
So now, no matter where you attack an enemy from, they'll get added. Before you had to be within their sight range, and now they'll attack you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we might die, right? Oh.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think that's
There we go. Well, it was a close one. So players definitely preferred it when it was like this difficulty where it's actually a threat. But that's basically the game. It's
that's what we have so far. I'd say one of the things that I really liked about how we kind of structured the game is, even though we got 3 attacks right now, a few places to go, it's really easy to expand on it. It's not hard to add more, and I think just the way we ended up building it kind of lends itself to being a good research tool, because whenever you want to whenever you think of a new this would be another good stat to tweak, it's pretty simple to just add it. And we get that feedback from players too when we're playtesting, what do you think? So our original playtesting, we didn't have the player health being something you can change, and that was what a lot of people seemed to think would be a good stat, so we added that in. And
during one of our playtests, we talked to players about other difficulty settings that they would like to see, because the first playtest that we did, we only had AP and damage were things that you could customize, and really the only things that people would want to, that they told us they wanted to customize, was health options and maybe enemy damage options, and then presets also. But definitely the way that we built the game, it blended itself really well to being a fast playtesting tool to get research and data for actually understanding how people care about difficulty in games. Because if we were to build a long experience, we would need people to sit down for quite a while to get any useful data.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that we structured it, we just were able to sit down in the library and get playtesters rapidly in 10-15 minutes to get the data that we needed. And people they thought the game was really fun to play, and really it looked nice, they thought. So everybody was happy with what they were playing.
Yeah, and we got some really good feedback for writing the paper later on.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's our senior project. Thanks for your time, Professor Hongs.